Extreme caution is strongly advised. Which ones? I've eaten 6 different apex predators back home. Curious which of yours might be new. Marielle Ash had spent 11 years working as a field biologist documenting wildlife behavior across some of Earth's most aggressively hostile ecosystems, an occupation that had taught her considerably more about practical predator management than any coalition briefing document had bothered preparing her colleagues to expect. Her current assignment, embedded within a joint research outpost studying the Valnaris forest's unusually dense apex predator population, had initially struck coalition administrators as routine personnel placement. Marielle's official credentials listed extensive xenobiology fieldwork experience, which technically satisfied deployment requirements without specifically detailing exactly what that experience had actually involved. 3 Mosvain, the outpost's senior diplomatic liaison and resident expert on Valnaris Forest's notoriously dangerous ecosystem, had delivered the standard predator safety briefing to incoming personnel for the past 4 years. The briefing structure rarely varied. Detailed species documentation, mandatory containment protocols, explicit warnings about 3 specific apex predator classifications responsible for the outpost's considerable historical casualty count. Most incoming researchers received this briefing with appropriate seriousness, asking clarifying questions, taking careful notes, occasionally requesting additional safety equipment. Marielle laughed, not nervously, not dismissively, but genuinely, with the warm amusement of someone who'd recently been told something they found entertaining rather than alarming. Which predators specifically? She asked, still smiling. 3, mildly thrown by this reaction, consulted his briefing notes. The Carveth stalker, a primarily nocturnal ambush predator weighing approximately 400 kilograms. The Ven, a pack hunter known for coordinated hunting strategies. And the Draenic apex, a solitary territorial predator considered the forest's single most dangerous species. Interesting, Marielle said, still grinning. I've personally eaten 6 different apex predator species back home. Curious whether any of yours might offer something genuinely new. The dining hall's ambient conversation noise dropped noticeably, several nearby researchers turning to study the exchange with growing curiosity. You've eaten them? 3 asked, his expression suggesting considerable difficulty processing the statement within any framework he'd previously developed. Where I'm from, Marielle said, apex predators occupy a complicated cultural position. We're simultaneously terrified of them and, depending on regional cuisine traditions, frequently inclined to put them on dinner plates. 3's colleague, a research scientist named Veska Halamir, leaned forward with genuine fascination, overriding professional caution. Your species actively consumes creatures capable of killing you? Selectively, Marielle said. Mostly after they're no longer capable of doing the killing part. Cooking helps with that. The conversation that followed, documented extensively in 3's eventual incident report, covered considerable ground regarding humanity's complicated relationship with apex predator species. A relationship coalition xenoanthropologists would later study extensively given how dramatically it diverged from typical species behavior patterns. What emerged through Marielle's patient explanation was that Earth's evolutionary history had produced a species whose relationship with dangerous predators existed simultaneously across multiple contradictory registers. Genuine fear, deep cultural respect, scientific fascination, and frequently culinary curiosity that other coalition species found genuinely difficult to comprehend. You're not afraid of them, Veska said, working through the implications slowly. I'm appropriately cautious, Marielle corrected. There's a meaningful difference. Fear that prevents you from understanding something useful isn't actually protecting you. It's just limiting what you're capable of learning. The Draenic apex, Valnaris Forest's most feared resident predator, made its presence known 3 weeks into Marielle's deployment during a routine equipment maintenance expedition that brought her research team uncomfortably close to its established territorial boundary. What followed, according to the official incident report 3 eventually filed with considerable professional bewilderment, involved Marielle calmly assessing the approaching predator's behavioral patterns with the specific attentive curiosity of someone documenting interesting wildlife rather than facing potential death, while her research colleagues maintained appropriate emergency distance protocols. It's hunting defensively, Marielle observed, studying the massive creature's cautious approach pattern, not aggressively. It's protecting territory, not actively hunting us. That distinction matters considerably less, her research partner said, if it decides we're worth eating regardless. Fair point, Marielle agreed, slowly retreating to an appropriate distance while continuing her observation. Though, for what it's worth, I'd guess it's probably delicious. Properly prepared. The Draenic apex, apparently deciding the retreating research team represented insufficient territorial threat to warrant pursuit, eventually withdrew back into denser forest coverage, leaving Marielle's colleagues considerably more rattled than Marielle herself appeared. You weren't frightened, 3 observed afterward, reviewing the encounter footage with professional fascination. I was appropriately respectful, Marielle said. There's a difference between fear that protects you and fear that prevents useful observation. I needed to understand its behavior pattern, not just survive the encounter. And the comment about it being delicious? Marielle grinned. Mostly genuine curiosity, partly habit. Where I'm from, that's frequently how predator encounters end eventually, for one species or the other. 3 considered this for a long moment, recalibrating assumptions that had structured 4 years of careful predator safety protocols. Your species' relationship with dangerous creatures, he finally said, is considerably more complicated than anything our briefing materials currently document. Most interesting things usually are, Marielle said. By the conclusion of her 18-month deployment, Marielle had successfully documented behavioral patterns for all 3 of the forest's apex predator species, contributed substantially revised safety protocols that incorporated her field-tested observational techniques, and, according to 3's somewhat reluctant final incident report, consumed exactly 1 carefully prepared Carveth-stalker steak during an informal celebration dinner, marking her research team's successful project completion. How was it? Veska asked, genuinely curious despite considerable prior skepticism. Needs better seasoning, Marielle said, considering thoughtfully. But the texture is promising. I think we're onto something here. 3, watching this exchange with the specific exhausted fondness of someone who had spent 18 months gradually accepting that humanity's relationship with danger simply operated according to entirely different rules than anything he'd previously encountered, found himself laughing despite considerable professional decorum suggesting otherwise. I'm updating our official species profile, he said. Under cultural notes, I'm specifically documenting that humans apparently respond to apex predator warnings with recipe suggestions. That's accurate, Marielle agreed cheerfully. Though, for the official record, I'd recommend listing it as culturally adaptive curiosity rather than recklessness. Sounds considerably more professional. 3 made the amendment exactly as suggested, though he privately suspected both descriptions, viewed honestly, were probably equally accurate. 3 eventually concluded that humanity didn't fear apex predators any less than anyone else. Humans had simply evolved on a world where fear was expected to share the table with curiosity and occasionally appetite.